Hi everybody, let's now in this video consider the impact of trade unions in monopsony-controlled labour markets. The diagram really is at the heart of everything in this theory, but it's one of the most complicated diagrams in the entire course. Not very helpful. But in this video I'm going to break it down for you, I'm going to make it really simple for you to smash it when it comes to using it in your exams and in your essays. What I've started with here is the basic monopsony labour market, and we can see the end outcomes. The quantity of workers way less than competitive quantities, and the wages on offer way less than competitive wages. Outcomes we're used to considering my previous video on monopsony. Great stuff. Now let's see what a trade union will do in impacting this market and getting involved in this monopsony market. First, let's remind ourselves, what do trade unions do? Well, trade unions bargain for higher wages, and assuming that trade unions are strong, they control the supply of labour at given wage rates. So a trade union looking at this will say, whoa, monopsonist, you are offering a wage rate that's grossly unfair for all the workers here. A wage rate way less than the marginal revenue product of workers. Workers are getting a rough deal here. So we're going to come in and we're going to bargain for a higher wage. So the trade union will say, forget WM, we want a wage rate of WTU for our workers. And let's say it's there, WTU. At that wage rate, the monopsonist becomes a wage taker up until a limit. And we know from my previous video on trade unions, at that trade union wage, there is a limit to the number of workers that will be willing to work at that new wage rate. And that limit can be found by taking that wage rate across to our supply curve, and that takes us to there. Let's remind ourselves why. Well, at that wage rate, you can see that all of the workers on the supply curve beneath the black dot are very, very, very happy with this wage rate. They would have been willing to work at a wage rate less than WTU. So now, with the trade union representing them, bargaining for a wage of WTU, they're extremely happy to work at that wage rate. So the trade union is controlling the supply of these workers. So now, for a monopsonist to employ workers, up until this point, they have to take the trade union wage, assuming that the trade union is strong, of course, and has a high union density. Which means that the supply curve now for this monopsonist is going to be horizontal. The monopsonist becomes a wage taker. So we can draw the supply curve, which is horizontal up until that limit there. But that's not just the supply curve. That is also now the average cost of labour curve, and it's the marginal cost of labour curve as well. Because for the monopsonist employing workers up until this limit, each worker is being paid the same wage of WTU. So the marginal cost now is constant at WTU. So this black line is now the new supply curve, is the new average cost of labour curve, and it's the new marginal cost of labour curve up until this black dot. Beyond this black dot though, if the monopsonist wants to employ more workers, they need to increase the wage to attract workers into this industry. The supply curve tells us that. And that means that beyond this black dot, the supply curve reverts back to the original supply curve, which now looks like that. And we can label this black line our new supply curve. So we can call that supply trade union, which is equal to the average cost of labour now. So that is our new trade union supply curve in this monopsony control labour market. And it's got a kink to it for the reasons I've said. Very simply, beyond this black dot, the monopsonist needs to increase the wage to attract more workers to work for them. But, crucially, the monopsonist doesn't just increase the wage for the next worker beyond the black dot. No. As soon as the monopsonist increases the wage beyond this black dot to attract more workers to take jobs for them, they are increasing the wages for everybody, all the workers that came before that worker as well. Which means that this black dot, the marginal cost of labour reverts back to its original. So this black dot here, the marginal cost of labour was there. And now the marginal cost of labour goes back to its original. Because again, the monopsonist doesn't just increase the wage of the next worker to attract that worker to work for the monopsonist, no. As soon as the monopsonist raises the wage, they have to raise the wage for every worker working for them. So the marginal cost of labour curve now goes back to the original, much, much higher, a big jump, of course. And you can see that the marginal cost of labour curve has got a massive discontinuity in it. Don't let that fool you, don't let that surprise you or shock you or worry you. All you need to do is to connect the dots here to get the overall marginal cost of labour curve. and that gives us an MCL curve that looks like that. So again, we can label this total black line now as our marginal cost of labour, but our trade union marginal cost of labour curve. So what we have beyond the black line are a few differences. We get a kink in our supply curve, and we get a vertical discontinuity in our marginal cost of labour curve. Nothing to worry about, that's just what happens, and hopefully now you understand why these supply curves, the average cost curve and the marginal cost curve, look very funky in this diagram right here. But now, having drawn these two curves, the average cost and the marginal cost curve, we can now go back to our original monopsony condition and understand where the quantity of workers comes from. The monopsonists, we know, given these new conditions now, given these new curves, will still hire up until where MRP equals the marginal cost of labour. That maximises the profit that the monopsonist brings in from hiring workers. And that point occurs here, where MRP equals the marginal cost of labour, and that gives us a quantity of workers, call it TU. So that's now employment in the monopsony. Great, we're done with this diagram. Now we need to analyse the outcomes. What is this trade union doing? What has it done to this labour market, to this monopsony controlled labour market? Well, it's pretty clear to see that wages have increased. And that's not a surprise. That's exactly what trade unions are all about. They are increasing wages in this market, absolutely. But whereas before in my previous video, we said that trade unions will actually reduce the quantity of workers in competitive labour markets. But when the labour market is controlled by monopsonists, what's happening to employment? We can see clearly that employment is actually increasing. Wages are increasing and employment is increasing. Trade unions are actually doing a great thing in this imperfectly competitive market, in this monopsony controlled labour market. They're increasing wages closer to competitive labour market outcomes, but they're also increasing employment, increasing the quantity of workers towards the competitive labour market outcomes as well. So trade unions are improving efficiency in monopsony controlled labour markets. Revolutionary stuff here, very different to what we're used to say about trade unions. So that tells you that when there is a monopsony employer out there, trade unions getting involved can actually be really beneficial, can be very efficient. Trade unions here have got significant value. And when it comes to writing an essay, a really powerful evaluation guide will be working out significantly what value trade unions have. And we can answer that question if we know how strong monopsony power is. Remember from my previous video, how do we measure monopsony power? Well, we look at what wages are and we compare that to MRP. If there is a huge difference between the wage on offer by the monopsonist and MRP, that means the monopsonist has got significant control. So the bigger the difference, if a trade union gets involved, the bigger the benefit the trade union will bring in this market. The greater the efficiency gains if the trade union gets involved in bargaining for higher wages and also increasing the quantity of workers. So that explains what a trade union can do when a monopsony is controlling a labour market. Very, very powerful stuff. Hope now you understand it and understand all these kinks and vertical discontinuities. Hopefully very simple stuff. But these end outcomes, guys, is why you need to focus once you can nail this diagram. Thank you so much for watching, guys. Hopefully you found that really interesting. I will see you all in the next video.